Welcome back to the deep dive. You know that feeling, right? You spend hours trying to memorize foreign words, maybe for a trip or a class, and then poof, 48 hours later, they're just gone. It's incredibly frustrating.
It really is. And if that sounds familiar, well, this deep dive is definitely for you.
Yeah, today we are tackling that universal problem, forgetting. We're diving into the actual science behind why we forget language stuff so easily, and more importantly, how to actually stop it permanently.
And let's bust a myth right away. There's this idea that learning a language as an adult is just inherently hard. Our
Yeah.
sources, they strongly disagree. I mean, think about it. Kids soak up language without even trying.
Right.
The real issue for adults isn't really about brain power or cognitive decline. It's more about, fitting learning into a busy life and, crucially, understanding how your own brain actively filters out information it deems, well, unimportant.
So our mission today isn't just about motivation tips. We're going deeper. We want to get straight into the neuroscience of it all.
Exactly. We're looking at the brain's built-in filters, the biochemical stuff, hormones, neural pathways, all the things that actually turn that fragile temporary learning into solid long-term memory.
And we're going to show you how this whole process, learning strategically, could actually be, well, fun, maybe even a bit addictive.
Seriously, because when you learn the right way, your brain rewards itself. It throws this little chemical party. Think of it like a super exclusive drug-fueled memory party happening right in your head.
Okay, I like the sound of that. A drug-fueled memory party. Let's break down how we get invited.
Right, and we'll look at the guest list, the science, everything.
Perfect. So let's start with the main hurdle.
Mm-hmm.
Why are foreign words so darn forgettable in the first place? What's going on with this filter?
Okay, so this brain filter, it's not like our brain is just sitting there diligently recording everything we throw at it, is it?
Not at all. Think of it more like
Yes.
a supremely efficient energy conservation machine. Maybe even a bouncer at a club.
A bouncer. How so? Well, it's all about efficiency, right? The brain's job is to save energy, so it prioritizes information. If something seems relevant, like it relates to survival, safety, strong emotions, it gets the VIP pass. It's kept.
Okay.
But if the information seems kind of arbitrary, random, uncontextualized, like a weird foreign sound or spelling you've never encountered.
It gets flagged.
Exactly. Flagged as noise, maybe even energy waste, and it gets bounced. Quickly deleted. The filter does its job.
And that's precisely the problem with learning new vocabulary, isn't it? You hear a word like maxka, the Hungarian word for cat.
Right.
It sounds weird. It doesn't seem to mean anything on its own. And crucially, it has zero connection to your life, your experiences initially.
So by default, it's forgettable. The brain's design basically works against you in that initial stage.
It falls into that forgettable category.
Yeah, it gets hit by what psychologists call shallow processing. This idea came from the levels of processing framework years ago. Basically, information can be processed at different depths.
Shallow versus deep.
Right. Shallow processing is just looking at the surface stuff, the sound of the word, what the letters look like, maybe just linking it directly to the English word, like cat gato.
That's what we always do in school, right?
Right.
Word pairs. Flashcards with English on one side, Spanish on the other.
Exactly. And it's fast. You can drill through a lot of words that way. But the information is fleeting. It's built on sand, really, destined for rapid decay because the brain sees it as superficial.
We're just connecting one arbitrary sound, gato, to another arbitrary sound, cat.
And that whole approach kind of misses the point, doesn't it? The goal isn't that when you see gato, you think, oh, right, cat.
No, you want to think of, well, a cat.
Yeah.
The actual furry thing.
Precisely. Your brain naturally thinks in concepts when information is meaningful. So if you're stuck doing that little translation step in your head every time,
You're stuck at that shallow level.
yep. And your brain recognizes that connection is flimsy, inefficient. It says, okay, this isn't important enough. Let's ditch it. Save the energy.
Wow. So the translation step itself, the thing we think is helping us learn, is actually signaling to the brain that this new word is secondary, discardable.
In many ways, yes, it becomes a crutch that reinforces the idea that the new word isn't the primary reality. It's an uphill battle against those natural filters.
So we need strategies to actively, climb around those filters.
We need to hack the system by making the information immediately and deeply relevant from the get-go.
Okay, let's talk hacking. If shallow is word to word, cat equals gatto, what's the first step deeper? How do we start climbing?
Well, the first move is shifting from just recognizing the word to recognizing the concept. Like we just said, recalling images is way better for the brain than recalling other words.
So instead of gatto, cat, the word,
You connect gatter directly to a mental picture of a cat. Any cat, initially. That simple step moves you beyond just sound association and into the conceptual world your brain prefers to operate in.
That makes intuitive sense. Pictures feel stickier than just words. But you mentioned our sources go even deeper. There's a third level, the pizza principle.
Ah, yes. The pizza principle territory. This is where it gets really interesting because we stop trying to just trick the brain and start genuinely collaborating with it. We inject personal meaning.
How does that work?
Well, think about this study. Researchers had college students try to memorize lists. Some lists had abstract concepts, others had concrete objects.
Okay, like what kind of concepts and objects?
Things like tool or instrument over the abstract ones. And then concrete things like apple or Snapple, things you can easily picture.
Right, so you'd think the concrete things, apples, would be easier to remember. You can see them.
That's what you'd expect. But the students actually remembered twice as many of the abstract concepts, the tools and instruments.
Really, why on earth would that happen? Tool is so vague compared to an apple.
Because think about how you'd memorize tool. You can't just picture a single shape, right? A hammer looks different from a screwdriver. So to encode tool or instrument, you have to do more mental work. You have to categorize it by its function, its use. You probably connect it to past experiences, maybe remembering using a specific hammer or playing a guitar.
Ah, so you're forced to engage more deeply, classify it, link it to existing knowledge.
Exactly. That extra cognitive effort, that deeper classification, made it stickier than just passively recalling the shape of an apple.
Okay, so if that extra conceptual work makes abstract ideas stick, how do we apply that to learning concrete words like gatto? We need to force that same level of personal work.
Precisely. That's the core idea. To really encode a word permanently, like really permanently, it needs to connect to your own life, your personal schema.
So when I make a flashcard for gatto,
The word itself isn't enough. And even a generic picture of a cat isn't quite enough for the deepest level. But if you actively choose an image of your cat, maybe your childhood cat, Lily, or you specifically associate Gatto with Lily, and you maybe even jot down a note about where you were when you first learned the word, or a funny thing Lily used to do, that personal choice, that creative act,
that's the hack.
that lets you sidestep the brain's energy-saving filters. You're telling your brain, hey, this isn't random noise, this connects to me.
So it's not just about having the memory, it's the active, intentional, creative process of building that specific memory link that really counts.
Bingo. That moment you spend thinking, okay, Gatto, what does this remind me of? Maybe it's a cat you saw on holiday in Spain. Maybe it's a friend's cat. You find your link.
You link the word story to your own story.
Right. A city you visited, a friend, a feeling. You create this multisensory memory package that's unique to you. And the sources emphasize this, that intentional creative work makes words way more memorable, like 6 times more memorable, apparently, than just analyzing structure or looking up a definition.
It takes the word from being just foreign noise and makes it a specific piece of your personal history.
And here's the kicker, why having fun is actually serious business for learning. Boredom. That turns those mental filters right back on.
Yeah.
The second the process feels mundane, like you're just mindlessly flipping through pre-made flashcards someone else created, your brain tunes out. It decides the task lacks personal relevance. It's not worth the energy. Information starts leaking out of your ears, so to speak.
But if you inject that creativity, that personal connection,
You keep the filters down. You keep the brain engaged.
okay, that clicks. So if I learn maska, the Hungarian word, and I take a minute to connect it to my grandma's fluffy Persian cat, visualize her, maybe think about the slightly scratchy sound of the word, that connection is mine. It's specific.
It's sticky. You've linked sound, spelling, imagery, and personal experience. You've built this rich web of connections.
An orchestra of memory connections, as you put it.
Yeah. And that memory, that personally forged memory, is now primed and ready for the final crucial step, making it permanent through recall.
All right, so we figured out how to create a really sticky memory by making it personal, deep. But just creating it isn't enough, right? Things still fade. How do we stop that sticky word, like maska linked to grandma's cat, from just degrading over time?
Exactly. Creation needs preservation. And that brings us to a really key principle. Don't just review, actively recall.
Okay, what's the difference? Reviewing versus recalling.
It's a massive difference in terms of what's happening in your brain. Passive reviewing is things like flipping through your notes, rereading a chapter, maybe just staring at a flashcard with the answer visible.
We've all done that. Glancing at the answer and thinking, oh, yeah, yeah, I know that one.
Right. But it's incredibly inefficient neurochemically. It requires almost no mental effort. It gives your brain this illusion of familiarity, the illusion of knowing. But it doesn't trigger the chemical processes needed to really lock it into long-term storage.
It's like self-deception that the brain is happy to go along with because it's easy.
Totally. The real work, the actual neurological heavy lifting, happens when you switch to active retrieval or active recall.
What does that look like in practice?
Imagine trying to fill a completely blank sheet of paper with everything you remember about a topic. Or, more commonly, facing a flashcard where the answer is totally hidden. You have to produce the answer from scratch.
That moment of struggle, like, ugh, what was that word?
Yes, that moment of judgment, that brief struggle to drag the memory out, that is the catalyst. That's what kicks off the neurological changes.
Okay, let's get into it. What's actually firing off in the brain when we manage to wrestle that word, moshka, out of our temporary storage? Talk us through this drug-fueled memory party.
Right. So you initiate that difficult retrieval attempt. Your brain immediately gets its regulatory systems involved. The memory network associated with Mosca and Grandma's cat gets reactivated. And then key brain structures start coordinating. Their job is to take that fragile short-term memory trace and consolidate it, make it permanent, move it to long-term storage.
And which structures are the main players here, the VIPs at the party?
Two big ones are the amygdala and the hippocampus.
Okay.
The amygdala is like the brain's emotion and alert center. When you struggle to recall, it senses the effort, the slight stress, and it calls for stress hormones and neurotransmitters. It basically sends out an alert. Attention, everyone. This information is being tested. Performance matters.
So that little bit of cognitive stress is actually good.
It is. It flags the information as important, high priority for consolidation.
The amygdala puts it on the urgent list. Got it.
Yeah.
What about the hippocampus?
The hippocampus is like the central switchboard for memory formation. It's the architect. Its job is to map out all the neural networks involved, the sound of Masca, the spelling, the image of Grandma's cat, the feeling associated with it, all those bits we linked together earlier.
And we do the deep processing.
Exactly. The retrieval attempt forces the hippocampus to physically strengthen the connections between all those bits, wiring them together more tightly within the cerebral cortex.
And this is the neurons that fire together, wire together idea, right? Synaptic plasticity, building the structure of the memory.
Precisely. But here's the really cool part, the drug-fueled bit. When you successfully recall the word after that struggle, bam, your brain's reward centers unleash a powerful surge of dopamine.
Ah, dopamine, the pleasure chemical.
Yes, but here it's acting like super potent memory fertilizer.
So that feeling of satisfaction that, yes,
Yeah.
I got it, when you finally remember the word.
That's not just in your head, it's a real chemical event.
Yeah.
That dopamine floods directly into the hippocampus.
Wow.
And it acts like a chemical stamp of approval. It tells the brain, hey, this retrieval worked. We need to make this neural pathway permanent. Prioritize this. It reinforces that specific circuit, makes it stronger, faster to access next time, and much less likely to fade.
That completely changes how I think about that little moment of triumph. It's literally the brain rewarding itself for learning.
It's a built-in chemical reward loop designed to make learning stick. Compare that to just passively looking at a translated word list. It doesn't stand a chance, does it? No struggle, no retrieval, no dopamine surge.
No memory party.
No memory party. So this cycle is key to ending forgetting. You learn a word deeply, personally. You shelve it. Later, you struggle to recall it. You succeed. You get the dopamine hit. The memory strengthens. You shelve it again.
And each time you successfully recall it, it gets stronger and lasts longer before you need to recall it again.
Exactly. That constant cycle of recall, consolidation, shelving, and then meeting the word again just before you forget it. That, according to our sources, is the absolute most efficient way to drill large amounts of information into permanent long-term memory. ### V. Tools and techniques for efficient acquisition.
Okay, understanding the neurochemistry is one thing, but we need practical tools to actually implement this recall strategy effectively. We need something to prompt that recall attempt at the right time just before the memory fades.
And that's where space repetition systems, or SRSs, come in. They're basically the delivery vehicle for that optimal recall timing.
So flashcards on steroids, essentially.
Pretty much. Think of them as smart computerized flashcard systems. Their goal is to create a personalized study schedule for you. They use algorithms to predict, or at least estimate, the point at which you're just about to forget a particular word or fact.
And then it shows you the card.
Right then.
Yeah.
It prompts you to recall it precisely when it's most difficult but still possible. This maximizes the mental effort involved.
Which maximizes the consolidation and that dopamine squirt we talked about.
Exactly. It leverages that forgetting curve to your advantage.
There's a classic manual version of this, isn't there? The Leitner box.
Yeah, named after Sebastian Leitner, a science journalist from the 70s. It's a simple but ingenious physical system. You have several boxes, maybe 5.
Okay.
All your new flashcards start in box 1. You review box 1 every day. If you successfully recall a card from box 1, it moves to box 2. Box 2 might get reviewed only every 2 or 3 days. Success there moves it to box 3, maybe reviewed once a week, and so on. Each box has a longer review interval.
So the cards you know well get seen less often. But what happens if you mess up? If you forget a word that's made it to box 3?
Ah, that's the crucial part. Failure sends it right back to the beginning, all the way back to box 1.
Ouch. Strict.
But effective. The card has to earn its way back up through repeated successful recalls at increasing intervals. Any card that manages to survive all the way to the final box has pretty much proven it's solidly in your long-term memory. Modern SRS software just automates this, often with more sophisticated predictive timing.
And this seems really important based on what we discussed earlier. There's a huge caveat, right? You can't just go online and download someone else's pre-made flashcard deck for your target language and expect magic.
Absolutely not. Our sources are really clear on this. Trying to use someone else's deck is like trying to optimize the timing for recalling a memory that was never properly formed in the first place. You're fighting those brain filters again.
Because you skip the deep processing, the personal connection step.
Exactly. The real power of this whole approach, the reason it bypasses the filters, isn't just the spaced repetition algorithm. It's the initial creative process of making the flashcard yourself.
Choosing the image, finding that personal link, maybe even recording yourself saying the word, or finding a good native audio clip.
Yes, that's what creates the foundational memory, the dopamine-eligible memory. If someone else chose the picture for Gato, it's just another shallow link for your brain. If you chose the picture of your cat, Lily...
That's the deep, sticky memory that the SRS is then designed to strengthen and make permanent.
Precisely. The SRS optimizes the recall timing for a memory you've already properly built. Without that building step, you're just shuffling shallow connections around.
Okay, vital point. Let's shift from vocabulary to sounds. Because getting pronunciation right early on seems like another way to avoid wasting time later. You mentioned the broken word trap.
Yes, the broken word trap. It's such a common frustration. It happens when you learn a new word, primarily through reading. You see the spelling, you kind of guess the pronunciation in your head, but you guess wrong.
And you internalize that wrong sound.
Right. Then, months later, you hear a native speaker actually say the word correctly in conversation, and you don't recognize it at all. You think it's a completely different new word you've never encountered.
Because your internal sound file doesn't match the external reality.
Exactly. Your reading vocabulary and your listening vocabulary are out of sync. And it's not just mild confusion. Sometimes it's a genuine perception issue, like the example with differentiating sounds.
The rock versus lock thing for Japanese speakers.
Yeah. Because their native language doesn't distinguish that LR sound, their adult brains have literally been trained to filter out that specific phonetic difference. It sounds the same to them. This shows why tackling pronunciation early is so important. You're training your ear to notice sounds that aren't in your native language. It saves enormous confusion down the line.
So how do we train our ears and mouths for these new sounds effectively?
Well, we need tools that make the subtle differences explicit. Things like minimal pair testing are great.
Minimal pairs?
Yeah, pairs of words that differ by only one single sound, like ship and sheep in English, or maybe perro and perro in Spanish with the different R sounds. Drilling these forces your brain to focus on just that one tricky sound difference repeatedly.
Isolates the problem.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned the International Phonetic Alphabet, the IPA. Well, it's kind of intimidating.
It can look complex, yeah, with all those weird symbols, but it's incredibly useful because it's a consistent system. Unlike English spelling, where off can sound completely different in through, though, tough, cough.
Right. English spelling is chaotic.
The IPA gives you one unambiguous symbol for each distinct sound in any language. It shows you exactly how a sound is made, where your tongue should be, what shape your lips make. It helps you see how a foreign sound might be built from phonetic components you actually already know, just combined differently. It demystifies pronunciation.
So it provides a clear map for sounds. saving guesswork. Okay. Last tool point, tackling the sheer volume. Native speakers know thousands, tens of thousands of words. How do we even start?
Strategically, you don't need 30,000 words to communicate effectively. The approach recommended is to build a solid foundation first. Focus on the top 1,000, maybe 2,000 most frequent words.
The most common ones.
Yeah, and crucially, focus on ones that are easy to visualize. Concrete nouns, common verbs, you can often learn these directly with pictures, bypassing translation altogether, which reinforces that deeper processing from the start.
And getting those first couple thousand words gives you a huge payoff.
Yeah. Massive. Those 2,000 words often cover something like 80% of everyday conversation or non-technical texts. It gives you a huge confidence boost and a functional base.
And then once you have that base,
Then you customize. You start targeting vocabulary specific to your goals and interests. Learning Spanish for history. Focus on historical terms. Learning Japanese for anime. Focus on colloquialisms from shows you like.
it brings it back to personal relevance again.
Exactly. It ensures the vocabulary you're learning now is directly meaningful and useful to you, which keeps motivation high and continues leveraging that deep personal processing method we talked about. It's about smart targeting, not just brute force memorization.
Okay, so we've got strategies for building sticky memories and targeting vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
But memorizing words isn't the same as using a language fluently. We need to connect the circuit, right? Bring in actual language use. Let's start with input, comprehensible input, or CI.
Right, CI. This is a cornerstone concept, largely thanks to Stephen Krashen. The basic idea is input listening or reading that you can understand, but that's just slightly beyond your current level.
Often called I+1. Your current level is I, and the input is just one step ahead.
Exactly. That +1 is crucial. Why? Because if the input is too easy, like I+0, stuff you already know perfectly, well, you don't learn anything new.
Makes sense.
But if it's too difficult, say I+5, way over your head, it just becomes noise. You get overwhelmed, frustrated, and crucially, your brain's filters slam shut. We'll talk about the effective filter in a sec, but basically, stress kills acquisition.
So that sweet spot, I+1, is key. Challenging enough to learn, but not so hard. It's discouraging. And the input needs to be compelling, right? Interesting.
Absolutely essential. If you're genuinely interested in the message, in the story, or the information, you kind of forget you're learning a language. Your focus is on meaning. That lowers your psychological defenses and allows your brain to absorb language structures more subconsciously, more naturally.
The sources had a good practical tip for this for intermediate learners trying to read their first book.
Oh yeah, that's a great example of CI. Find a story you already know really well. Maybe a book you loved as a kid, or the novel version of a movie you've seen loads of times.
So the plot is familiar.
Right. Then try reading it in your target language while simultaneously listening to the audiobook version in that language. The familiarity of the story provides massive context clues, helps you guess unknown words, and the audio keeps you moving, helps you absorb the rhythm and flow of the spoken language without getting stuck on every single unfamiliar word.
That sounds much less intimidating than just diving into a completely unknown book. But related to listening.
Why is using subtitles generally discouraged if your goal is listening comprehension?
It comes down to the path of least resistance. For most adults, reading is simply easier and faster than processing spoken language, especially a foreign one.
Our brains default to the easier task. Exactly. When those subtitles are on screen, your eyes naturally gravitate towards them. You end up reading the dialogue instead of truly listening to it and wrestling with the sounds. You're unintentionally robbing yourself of the listening practice you need.
So if listening is your goal, you got to turn off the visual crutch.
You really do. Force your brain to engage with the sound waves. It's harder, but it's how you improve.
Okay, so that's input. But it can't just be passive reception, can it? We need output, too.
Yeah.
Speaking, writing.
Absolutely critical. Output is where the rubber meets the road. It's a production challenge, not just recognition. It forces you to actively retrieve language, to organize your thoughts, to find the right words, the right grammar.
To work through the gaps in your knowledge.
Yes, and to take risks, to try things out, maybe make mistakes, and figure out how to get your meaning across, even when you don't have the perfect phrasing. It's active problem solving. If you can't pull a word out of your long-term memory and actually use it correctly in a sentence, have you really learned it?
Good point. And the sources mentioned that the best kind of input might actually be corrected output.
That's a fascinating idea, isn't it? When you try to produce language, say, you write an email or a short paragraph and you make mistakes, and then a native speaker Maybe an affordable tutor from a site like italki corrects those specific mistakes.
That feedback is super targeted.
Incredibly targeted and incredibly memorable. Why? Because the correction is directly related to your thoughts, your intended meaning, your specific error patterns. You immediately see the gap between what you wanted to say and how a native speaker would say it. That reinforces the correct pathway much more effectively than generic grammar exercises.
It makes the learning deeply personal
Yeah,
again.
exactly. It's input tailored precisely to your current output needs.
Now, all this input-output taking risks ties into something called the effective filter, right? The emotional side of learning.
Yes, the effective filter. It's basically the idea that our emotional state, things like anxiety, motivation, self-confidence, acts like a filter that can block language input from actually reaching the parts of the brain responsible for acquisition.
So even if the input is perfectly comprehensible, I plus one if you're feeling super anxious or unmotivated.
The filter goes up, the information might hit your ears, but it doesn't get processed deeply, it doesn't stick. For adults, high anxiety is often the biggest bottleneck. It makes us feel like we're learning slowly, even if our actual cognitive ability is fine.
It leads to freezing up in class, avoiding speaking.
Right. And those neural networks we worked so hard to build with deep processing and recall, they just won't fire properly under pressure if that filter is sky high.
So you can have the best flashcards, the perfect SRS schedule, but if you're too stressed or self-conscious, the memories become inaccessible when you need them most.
That's the problem. Research backs this up. When you lower anxiety, acquisition improves significantly. Like that study on collaborative writing.
Where students work together.
Yeah. Sharing the pressure, working together, help them fix most of their grammatical issues and write more complex sentences. But more importantly, they reported feeling less anxious and more motivated because of the collaboration. Lowering the filter made the learning process itself more effective.
So managing the emotional side, making the learning experience less stressful, more engaging, more collaborative perhaps, that directly helps the brain do its neurochemical work.
Absolutely. It all feeds back. Lower anxiety allows for better input processing and more confident output. Success in output boosts motivation and lowers anxiety further. And that engagement makes the deep processing feel less like work and more like play, reinforcing that memory party loop. It's all interconnected. Hashtag, says, outro.
Wow. Okay, we have covered a lot of ground today, from
Mhm.
like the tiny chemical reactions with dopamine in the hippocampus all the way up to big strategies for speaking and writing practice.
It's quite a journey from neuron to conversation.
But the core message seems really clear, doesn't it? If you want to learn a language efficiently, you've got to move beyond just passively reviewing lists or relying on simple word-for-word translation.
Definitely. You have to be strategic. You need to consciously work with your brain's natural tendencies, not against them. That means bypassing those default filters by making new words and concepts deeply personally meaningful. The pizza principle in action.
Find your connection to the word, make it part of your story.
Exactly. And then you absolutely have to harness the power of active recall. That struggle to retrieve information is what triggers the brain's reward system, the dopamine, the consolidation, making those memories stick permanently. Tools like SRS can help manage the timing.
So it's about intentional, deep, personally relevant, and chemically rewarded practice, not just putting in hours flipping through a textbook.
It's quality over just quantity, driven by understanding the underlying neuroscience.
Which brings us to a really interesting final thought for you, the listener, to maybe chew on. We adults often feel like we're at a disadvantage compared to kids learning languages, right? Their brains are supposedly more plastic.
That's the common belief. But the research, it actually suggests something quite different. When you control for the number of hours of actual exposure to the language, adults often acquire language faster than young children do.
Wait, really? Adults learn faster than kids, hour for hour?
That's what studies indicate. So if adults often feel slower, what's the real barrier?
If it's not raw brain power or plasticity.
It's overwhelmingly about method in psychology. The big advantage adults have isn't necessarily a more malleable brain. It's our superior learning strategies. We're better at spotting patterns. We can use critical thinking. And crucially, we have the capacity for the deep emotional and personal connections we've spent this whole time discussing. Kids learn implicitly. We can learn explicitly and implicitly.
So the real game isn't about some innate language gift you either have or don't have.
Not really. It's much more about motivation, sticking with it, and most importantly, applying the right tools psychological tools like managing anxiety, and neuroscientific tools like deep processing and spaced recall. You already have an incredibly powerful learning machine in your head.
You just need the right user manual, a
Yeah.
scientifically validated one.
Precisely.
That is a fantastic and much more hopeful way to look at it. A brilliant deep dive into the science of actually making language stick. Hopefully this gives everyone listening a much more empowered approach for their next language learning adventure.
Let's hope so. Until next time.